Mateo had always known hunger. The streets of Manila were his home, and the sounds of the city were his lullabies. Every morning, he would wake up under a bridge where the cold concrete served as both bed and shelter. The world around him bustled with people rushing to work, children playing in parks, and vendors calling out the prices of fruits and vegetables. Yet, for Mateo, each day began with the same routine: searching for coins, begging for scraps, and hoping someone would pause to listen to his voice. Music was his escape, the one thing that made the world a little brighter despite his circumstances. He carried a small notebook, scribbled with lyrics he had learned by heart, and every day he would hum tunes that reminded him of a life he had only dreamed about. His voice was pure, powerful, and raw, shaped not in a studio, but in the harsh reality of life on the streets. People passing by would occasionally drop coins in his worn-out cup, but more often, they just hurried along, too busy to notice the boy who sang like an angel. Still, Mateo sang. It was his way of surviving, of expressing a pain and hope that words alone could not capture. Every note he hit was a defiance of the life that tried to keep him down, a promise to himself that one day, things would be different. One rainy afternoon, a tourist wandered into the alley where Mateo often sang. She had heard him before from the nearby street, but that day, something compelled her to stop. She pulled out her phone and recorded a short video of him performing a simple song, barely a minute long, yet filled with so much emotion that it could bring tears to anyone watching. She posted it online, unaware that within hours, Mateo's voice would begin traveling across continents. The clip went viral. Comments poured in, praising his talent, his strength, and the sheer beauty of his singing. People were moved by the story behind the voice, a boy who had nothing but still dared to dream, who had never set foot on a real stage, yet sounded like he belonged there. Social media became a window to his soul, and strangers began sharing the video, wanting the world to witness the boy who sang amidst hardship. A few weeks later, the unbelievable happened. Mateo received a message delivered through a volunteer who worked with children living on the streets. It was an invitation, one that sounded too good to be true. America's Got Talent wanted him to audition. Mateo could hardly believe it. At first, he thought it was a prank, but after a video call with the AGT team, everything became real. They explained the process, promised assistance with travel, and offered a chance that Mateo had only dreamed of during cold nights under the bridge. Excitement and fear mixed in his heart. For the first time in his life, he was being handed an opportunity that could change everything. Donations from kind strangers helped cover the cost of his passport, clothes, and ticket. On the day of departure, Mateo packed the few belongings he had: his notebook of lyrics, a toothbrush, and a pair of shoes borrowed from a volunteer. As the plane ascended into the sky, Mateo pressed his face against the window, staring down at the city that had been both cruel and beautiful. For years, he had wandered these streets, thinking that the world had forgotten him, yet now he was flying thousands of miles away to perform in front of millions. His mind raced with possibilities, fears, and dreams. What would the stage be like? What if he failed? But above all, there was hope, a fragile yet unbreakable hope that maybe, just maybe, his voice could change his life. He had survived so much, and this felt like the beginning of something extraordinary, a chance not just to sing, but to prove to the world, and to himself, that a boy from the streets could shine brighter than anyone ever imagined. Mateo stepped onto the AGT stage, his heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the bright lights shining down on him. The audience stretched before him like an ocean of faces, each one expectant, curious, and unaware of the story behind the boy standing in front of them. His clothes were simple, a shirt that had seen better days and jeans patched with care, but he didn't care about appearances. This was his moment, the moment he had been dreaming of for years under bridges and on the streets of Manila. The judges looked at him with polite curiosity, waiting for an explanation. When Simon Cowell leaned forward and asked why he was here, Mateo's voice trembled as he spoke softly, "I just want a chance." It was a simple statement, but in those few words lay the weight of a lifetime of struggles, of nights without food, of a dream that refused to die despite the world's indifference. The music began, soft at first, almost hesitant, as if sensing the fragility of the moment. Mateo closed his eyes and let the song flow through him. Every note carried the pain of abandonment, the hunger that gnawed at his body, and the hope that had been his companion through years of hardship. As he reached the chorus, his voice soared, clear and powerful, filling the theater with a sound that seemed impossible for someone so young, someone who had never sung on a real stage before. The audience fell silent, entranced, unable to look away. It wasn't just the skill in his voice, it was the emotion, raw and unfiltered, that made every person in that room lean forward, holding their breath. The judges, known for their tough exteriors and high standards, had tears in their eyes. What they were witnessing was more than a performance, it was a story of survival, of resilience, and of a boy who had refused to let his circumstances define him. When the final note lingered in the air, there was a moment of complete silence, a heartbeat of awe before the theater erupted in thunderous applause. As the clapping continued, Simon Cowell remained seated for a moment, absorbing the weight of what he had just seen. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he rose from his chair and walked toward the golden buzzer. The audience watched, realizing something monumental was about to happen. "You're the reason we make this show," Simon said, his voice breaking slightly, and then he pressed the golden button. Confetti rained down in shimmering streams as Mateo collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed. Tears ran freely down his face as the magnitude of the moment washed over him. For the first time in his life, he felt seen, valued, and celebrated. The other judges rushed forward, enveloping him in hugs and congratulations. The video of this performance would soon explode across social media, becoming one of the most watched AGT clips of the year. Backstage, Mateo tried to process what had just happened. People who had never known him, who had never walked a day in his shoes, were now inspired by his story. Strangers shared his video, celebrities praised him, and messages of encouragement poured in from around the world. He couldn't stop smiling, but underneath that joy was a quiet, persistent awareness of how far he had come. He had left the streets of Manila behind, but he had carried every struggle, every hunger, every sleepless night into this moment. He realized that his journey had only just begun, that this stage was not the end but a doorway. With Simon's golden buzzer, he had not only earned a place in the competition's next round but had also captured hearts across the globe. Mateo understood now that his voice was more than just sound, it was a bridge, a way to connect his story with everyone willing to listen, to feel, and to believe that hope could triumph over despair. After the whirlwind of his audition and the unforgettable moment with Simon's golden buzzer, Mateo found himself living in a hotel provided by the show, a world so different from the streets of Manila that he could hardly believe it was real. For the first time, he had a proper bed, a warm shower, and food that wasn't scavenged or handed out from charity. Yet, even amidst this comfort, he felt a quiet pressure building inside him. This was no longer just a dream, it was real, and millions of people were now watching, waiting for his next performance. Mateo spent hours rehearsing, studying lyrics, and practicing his breathing. Every note had to carry the emotion he had poured into his life. Every phrase had to reflect the story of the boy who had survived hunger, fear, and loneliness. The semi-final stage was a different beast. The lights were brighter, the audience larger, and the stakes higher. Mateo chose a song about hope, survival, and the unbroken spirit of a child who refused to be defined by circumstances. As the music started, he took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and let his voice flow naturally, each note a reflection of years of struggle and dreams that refused to die. The audience sat in silence at first, captivated by the honesty in his voice. It wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration, a message to anyone who had ever felt powerless, that resilience could triumph over despair. When he hit the high notes, the theater erupted in cheers, and judges who had seen countless acts throughout their careers couldn't hide their awe. Mateo's semi-final performance became the talk of the season, earning standing ovations, emotional reviews, and millions of views online. By the end of the night, he had earned his place in the grand finale, a moment he could hardly have imagined when he sang Under Bridges in Manila. The grand finale arrived with a mixture of anticipation, excitement, and nerves that Mateo had never experienced before. The arena was packed, the cameras flashing, and the world watching. Mateo chose a song that was both personal and universal, a tribute to all the children who had known hardship, all the voices that had been unheard, and all the dreams that had been deferred. As he sang, the stage lights dimmed, and the audience raised their phone flashlights, creating a sky of stars in the darkened arena. Each note seemed to carry a story of struggle, hope, and triumph. The judges' eyes were filled with tears, the audience was mesmerized, and Mateo sang as if pouring every ounce of his being into the song. The final high note lingered in the air, powerful and pure, and for a moment, there was complete silence before the entire arena erupted in applause and cheers. When the votes were announced, Mateo didn't win the top trophy, but it hardly mattered. He had already won something far more significant: a record deal, a new home, and the ability to bring his family out of poverty. He had become a global inspiration, proof that talent, perseverance, and a relentless belief in oneself could break through the harshest circumstances. Mateo's story spread across the world, shared on news outlets, social media, and countless YouTube videos. People were moved not only by his incredible voice but by the journey he had undertaken to get there. From the streets of Manila to the bright lights of the AGT stage, Mateo's journey was a testament to the power of hope, resilience, and the belief that even the most unlikely dreams can come true. His life had changed forever, but he never forgot where he came from, carrying his roots and the struggles of the forgotten into every performance, inspiring millions to chase their dreams no matter the odds.